I would like to cordially welcome everybody to this session. Thank you for finding the time. My name is Patrick Pavlacic, and I'm the Chief Intelligence Officer at BONARD. In this webinar, we will be focusing on the latest recruitment trends on China. As you may know, the evolving landscape post-pandemic has been quite dynamic, and today we'll look at the recovery levels of China and student mobility flows and emerging trends. I will be joined by my colleague Susu from our China branch office, who's going to deliver the presentation on the latest trends. And after that, we will be joined by a panel of distinct and renowned experts on the Chinese market. Before we start, I'm just going to briefly introduce the company to those of you who may not be familiar with BONARD. We are a market research and strategic advisory company. We're based in Vienna, Austria, 2 other offices in Europe, and a branch office in China, in Tianjin. We specialize in the provision of market research and recruitment solutions to governments, sector associations, but also individual in education institutions and investors. Our core abilities lies within tracking the student mobility flows, the emerging patterns, and also tapping into emerging opportunities. As part of today's schedule, we will start with a brief market overview. We will be presenting some of the latest data on the Chinese market when it comes to study abroad mobility. We'll look at demand levels. We'll look at the 3 key international education sectors, this being the higher education sector, the K-12 sector, as well as student mobility in English language training. We will also present some of our latest data on the visa issuance rate, as well as visas as such, which will give you a bit of a taste of how Q1 2024 is developing and what kind of recovery we might see going forward. We will then sort of flow to the panel discussion, which will be focused around emerging trends in China. We'll look at changing student preferences. We'll look at access to information. We will look at destination preferences. And also our panelists will look at what they foresee for the Chinese market to happen in 2024 and perhaps going beyond. Of course, there's going to be a Q&A section open for our audience. I'll be monitoring the section, and probably at the end of our panel discussion, I'll invite our dear panelists to answer some of these questions. The recording will be made available after the session, and so will the slides. So you'll be given the opportunity to go through this data and connect with us after the session for any questions or comments. So without further ado, let me invite my colleague Susu. Susu is our senior research manager based in China. She's very familiar with the Chinese market, been spearheading our research projects and activity in China, which includes government work, but also student and parent surveys. So Susu, please take it away.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the introduction, and hello, ladies and gentlemen. Again, thank you for the participation. Yeah, my name is Sue, and actually, along with my team, we're based in China for BONARD China branch, and I'm going to give you guys a brief presentation about the market trends before the panel session, so that you have some background information. Right now, we are looking at a ranking. We can have a look at the higher education part first. Right, we still have the US at the top. The number for the US in higher education sector experienced actually a dramatic drop since 2019, and we will investigate that later. The US has rich education resource and a positive impression of the country that still attract Chinese students a lot, regardless of the global challenge. When we had some conversation about the US regarding higher education with agencies in China, some told us that policy-related factor don't really influence students' decision for higher education that much. The true influencing factor are safety-related news or factors mainly. And we can also see that UK has been growing since 2019, which we can see the exact number later too. And by the year 2022, it has surpassed Japan and Australia. Actually, the initial idea of here was to prepare the ranking of the four so-called traditional English-speaking destination, but at the end, we also added Japan here because it was around the same level, but just slightly higher than that of UK back in 2019. And Japan has long been a popular destination for Chinese. Malaysia are being mentioned by Chinese parents and agencies. These countries are closer to China, more cost efficient, and have a similar culture. They have certain advantage that educators from other destinations cannot ignore the competition from those destinations. Anyway, for higher education sector, we can say that the decision is a long-term one. So we can see the popularity of destination usually doesn't change over the night. However, when we look at a ELT, English language training sector, it's not quite the same, which is usually, the decision is usually a short-term one. Back in March this year, we had a webinar about language training, language camp in Singapore was specially mentioned as one of the most preferred destination by surveyed parents. And students can easily change their destination due to visa policy, travel ban, budget, or other, let's say, smaller factors. And this poses educators in this sector more opportunities, but at the same time, more challenges also. And when it comes to K-12, it's a little bit like higher education. The ranking is quite stable too. We got the US and Canada are for long, like famous for their quite K-12 education in China, either because of favorable immigration policy or the educational resource. And here we demonstrate the student number by destination for higher education sector. As mentioned previously, the US, shown as blue, remains a top destination for Chinese students seeking for higher education with consistent high number, even amidst the global challenge that we mentioned and the drop. The US is one of the destinations who took the hardest strike during that COVID period. But the good news is that student number is still bouncing back in the academic year 2023-24. We also noticed a trend of growing demand for graduate studies, and we noticed a limited demand for undergraduate programs. And in terms of recovery rate, or rather, let's call it a growth rate, we have UK, the rose purple one, who has surpassed its pre-COVID level back in studies too. We heard from agencies they called graduate program in the UK as short, flat, and fast programs, which are considered suitable for current market, meaning that the certification can be used for employment or further education purpose, and they have a shorter study period, meaning less expense. And there are data released showing that almost 2/3 of Chinese students consider multiple destinations when they apply for a higher education overseas. And our Asian friends in China also told us that students who apply for university in the UK often take Australia, which is showed as the golden line here, as a so-called second option, meaning that if a student cannot be accepted by the top universities in the UK nor Australia, when he or she considering the so-called second-tier universities, he might have a bigger chance to be accepted by the Australia ones than the UK ones. So we can see certain correlation between the lines of UK and Australia over the years. And we also roughly check the most discussed country on the internet and social media in China digital marketing landscape. Besides the traditional four, there are Germany, France, Japan, and other Asia countries mentioned, such as Malaysia. Actually, in Malaysia, the number of new applications from China increased from 12.6 thousand back in 2019, and it grew to 26,000 in 2023, which means it doubled. It's actually more than doubled its number. We don't actually have the enrollment number here. That's why we don't put Malaysia in this table. But you can imagine it could be the same level or even higher than that of France. And then when we look at the recovery rates, all the destinations demonstrated has recovered more than 70% than their pre-COVID level, meaning that the market is still recovering in process. And the most significant recovery, or let's say growth rate, is Hong Kong. We have it at top. We heard that they are pretty much favorable policies in the year. Agencies and students were pleasantly surprised that, for example, Hong Kong University this year accept some students whom it might not accept in previous years. And the university aimed to absorb more students from other regions. So the major intake is from China. Then we have the UK, which we also mentioned earlier. We also have Germany and France ranking the 3rd and 4th in this chart. They don't have a big student number as we see in the previous chart, but the recovery rate is rather good. Now we can have a look at the K-12 market about younger age students. K-12 market is more likely to be influenced by the factor like COVID-19 because as you might know, the younger students are, the more their parents would be concerned about their safety. When we look at the specific number of students, we can see that the market hasn't fully recovered to pre-pandemic level yet, just like the higher education one. In UK and Canada, we have the recovery rate showed at the right, around 70%, but look at Australia, the student number is around half of its previous size. But we can see for all the destinations, except for US, that we don't have the data here, we can see their nice U-shaped recovery curve, which indicates that we can be in certain level positive about the year coming up, the year 2024 and 25. And as for the ranking, we have Canada on top, which is bouncing back pretty nicely. And the student number to the US was 2nd place back in 2019. Both US and Canada has traditionally been top choices for younger students. And when choosing destination, the impression is very important. That is why those, for K-12 especially, the top destination doesn't shift easily. China is a big country. People in different regions, they might have different preference. In our last webinar about China K-12 market, we talk about a case that a really powerful local sales representative who is rooted in a city in China named Zhengzhou, is in the north of China. And he was there promoting his Switzerland school. And in 2 years or so, not only his school, but the Switzerland as a destination became more popular in Zhengzhou, in this very city, than in other regions. I'm telling this case because it is a little bit extreme, but what I want to say is that the decision of parents and students can be really strongly influenced by what is promoted. So if it is not in educators' strategy to have such a representative rooted in China. It can be also helpful to consider to study the level of popularity of your destination or your program type in different regions in China. And based on that knowledge, the resource can be more wisely allocated and more precisely used. And then on this page, we demonstrate the ELT Student Week. China used to be the #1 source market back in 2019. As you can see, it accounted for 15% of all student week in the global ELT market. But you can see that big drop after the pandemic, and we got Colombia and Brazil took over. But China is still on the 4th place as a source market. So we have reason to believe that there's an opportunity for China to go back to its place. And if we have some ELT providers in the audience, especially those who accept younger age students, I would like to mention again the language camp focus webinar we did in March. We actually surveyed 500 parents with consideration for overseas ELT program. And then we were asking their preference of ELT programs, including features like destination countries, program type, departure time, even budget, and so on. So that was quite fresh data and was quite detailed. So if you're interested, just feel free to write us and we can share the reporting and the slides and the data with you. Then I would like to share with you some data from our intelligence platform. Actually, BONARD is currently in the preparation of a very developed platform, which enables us to access to different type of data, such as student flows, global agency database, and market outlook trackers. This platform is not officially brought on yet, but please allow me to demonstrate part of the market outlook trackers of monthly visa update. Here I include the data we have it about the visa grants by destination. And we can see overall the number of visa granted has grown from 2022 to 2023. The situation per each destination just reconfirmed our analyzing previous pages about the student number. And we can see that Australia and the US is stable compared to previous years. And Canada stays rather stable and increasing. Unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to involve the UK data here, which I heard was just released. We might be able to update the data before we release the slides and the materials. Right, probably at this point, since we are already talking about the Q1 in 2024, maybe the support team can bring up our first poll question. Yes, we have prepared this in 2024, your expectation. Like compared to previous years, what are your expectations for 2024 in terms of the number of Chinese students? Okay, I will give you some time to fill that up. And then here, we can see the student visa grant rate benchmark. We can see that the rate in all the destinations showed is rather high and steady, especially in Australia, New Zealand, and UK. For Canada, the general trend of visa grant rate is getting down actually since 2021, with a significant drop in the first and last quarter of past 2 years. And as you might notice, actually, we are looking at a screenshot from this BONARD intelligent platform that I mentioned. As a platform will only be available by subscription later this year. So I think it's a point I might kindly ask Patrick here to give more introduction to the functions or features of using the platform. Maybe a little bit comment to the result of the poll question too.
Sure, thank you, Susu. I think the reason for the visa benchmark is fairly simple. I mean, as you know, the quite unique situation where a number of traditional destinations are introducing changes in their visa policies, it is quite imperative to be looking at short-term trends and sort of the markets, especially for the top tier traditional destination, has become a zero-sum game, at least temporarily. And so being able to identify some of these trends in terms of visa grant rate going down for a certain market, that opens up opportunities for student recruitment for another destination. And we do see that, you know, after certain normalization in 2023, markets will continue present these short-term opportunities. And so providers will be agile enough and will be able to identify these markets, again, by looking at the visa issuance rate and the grant rate, we'll be able to identify these opportunities. The platform will combine the visa data with student mobility data, which typically is available, you know, so several months after the conclusion of the calendar year. So it will be complementary to see how student flows are evolving. And again, the idea is to give education providers the ability to spot trends in a timely fashion and be able to adjust and optimize your marketing and recruitment activities throughout the year. One of the key takeaways for me, obviously, is that you know, the changing patterns in Chinese student mobility. If we look at the visa grant rate, China is one of the markets where obviously the grant rate is still high, so it does pose, you know, solid recruitment opportunities, combined with the fact that for most destinations, it hasn't really reached those pre-pandemic levels. Now let's probably have a look at the results of the poll. Right, so we see that the market sentiment is relatively conservative. I think people do see those trends and shifts in the student mobility, bearing in mind that probably the majority of our audience today is from those traditional destinations like the US, Canada, and the UK. So 13% of our audience expects a major increase in student numbers compared to 2023. Another 30% believe there's going to be more students compared to 2023, which so far looks the most realistic scenario for China. About 37% believe that numbers will remain stable, and compared to 2023 student intakes, about 16% expect fewer students compared to 2023. I do believe this is going to be also tied to individual institutions' ability to recruit students from China. One important development has been that because of these visa policy changes, a number of institutions are actually limiting the number of markets where they recruit students from. And again, because China has that relatively high visa approval rate, competition in China is growing, which increases student acquisition costs, but also it sort of concentrates students at a smaller pool of institutions. And the last but not least, 3% of our audience today believes there's going to be a major decrease in student numbers compared to 2023. So it's a fairly split decision within the audience. And we'll conclude our presentation with a brief identification of key trends, and then we'll commence the panel discussion.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. Well, yes, just before we start the next session, the panel discussion, let's have a quick look at the key takeaways from the data and also the market intelligence shared. Overall, we will comment China market as still recovering, but rather in a slower pace compared to other source market like India, for example. However, looking at the number of students per destination, we should not ignore the great potential of the market, not to mention the influence, or rather long-term influence of the education-related policies released in recent years. And as mentioned previously, the destination preference in each sector is more and more diverse over the year. there are tons of information about different destinations and programs coming up on the internet for parents and for students to explore. So the transparency of information here bring both opportunity and also more intense competition to the market. The current economic situation gets parents even more price sensitive. The so-called in return of investments, it's a term more and more mentioned when planning their overseas studies. Parents would calculate the affordability and employability when they consider which school to go or which destination to go. The data released by the MOE shows that more than 80% of higher education students who would seek for employment back in China after finalizing their overseas education. And the parents might ask how the overseas experience improve students' competitiveness in Chinese employment markets. I would say there are multiple ways of doing so, but it really depends on case-on-case programs. So I'm also very excited to explore more inspirations from our panelists today. For example, parents can appreciate if students would have internship opportunity in local companies. So when they search for a job, they might have some internship history in an overseas company. And sometimes for junior ELT programs, they are considered as a trial or preparation for later higher education in the destination. So a group project in students' dreamy or goal university can be a very attractive point. Or for certain program type, really small things like get a certification recognized in China or by certain well-known authorities can be considered really important too. So there are definitely more to share. So I'm just looking forward to our panelist session, their insight about this. And at last, what I would like to mention is that when entering China market, educator should keep in mind that this is a so-called buyer market, meaning that there are a lot of program of each type in the markets, and each type of program has its suitable student group. The competition between similar program is more in the service or the communication, the localization, the knowledge to the market, the right region to promote, the marketing channel, things like this. I often hear from agencies that programs are always replaceable, but the partnership is not. Agencies in China have a lot of choice, so they are careful when choosing partnerships. They are not working with the university or with the program. They are working with the person, with the partner. So it is very crucial for educators to select the right agencies and to work with them in, let's say, in their way or in the way of the market. And about that, I think I'm also gonna leave the topic open. We will find more answer or inspiration from our panelists today. So let me give the microphone to Patrick and start our panel session of today.
Thank you, Sisu. I appreciate your views, and hopefully the data was insightful. Again, we tried to compile a overall view of the demand levels. Certainly, there's more granular stuff we can provide after the session. I did my best to answer some of the questions coming through the Q&A section. Thank you very much. We will get to the rest. But it gives me great pleasure at this point to be introducing our panel of esteemed market experts on China. I would like to invite Mr. Minzi Sang, who's the president of BOSA, to join us today. We're very, very fortunate to have you with us today. As a lot of you may know, Mr. Sang is the president of Beijing Overseas Study Service Association. it's China's leading association for the study abroad service industry. And as part of his role, he facilitates various projects related to studying abroad, ensuring seamless cooperation between Chinese agencies and service providers. He has organized numerous industrial events to foster collaboration and enhance industry relationships. And notably, Mr. Sang has assisted UCAS by providing opinions and data on Chinese students, contributing to their 2023 market report. Once again, a warm welcome to the session.
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for inviting me here. It's a great pleasure to join the event and a great opportunity to share some ideas and information with you guys. Thank you.
Excellent. I would also like to welcome Ms. Rona Wu, who's the manager of Global Partnership Center at Shineway International, one of the leading agencies in China. Rona has 10 years of rich professional experience in the study abroad industry, particularly in marketing, promotion, and student recruitment. And as part of the one of the largest education agencies in China, she possesses extensive knowledge in attracting Chinese students to pursue their higher education studies abroad. As a graduate from a university abroad herself, Rona has a deep understanding of the outstanding student experience that international education can offer. And I must say, we look very much forward to hearing your professional views and experience. I think you're muted, Rona.
It's nice to meet you, everyone. I have this opportunity to meet everyone to share the agency view today, and to share the experience working in the agency and how students think about study in the UK or study abroad. So let's just wait the panel session where we're talking about the topic. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. And last but certainly not least, it is my distinct pleasure to invite Joshua Gabriel, who's the Senior Lead for Culture and Education at the British Council, China, to really complement the breadth of experience here in the virtual room. Joshua is the Senior Lead for Culture and Education at the British Council in China, and he is involved in fostering mutually beneficial collaborations between the UK and China by providing valuable insights to UK education stakeholders about the evolving education environment in the country. His 15 years of experience in international student recruitment have provided him with a comprehensive understanding of student mobility, and he has held several strategic leadership positions related to international recruitment in the UK and Asia. Once again, thank you very much for finding the time to join us today.
Thank you, Patrick. I look forward to our conversation, and I look forward to speaking to all the other panelists as well and learning from you.
Thank you. Perhaps let's start with having a look at those demand levels. We obviously had the poll that showed that the optimism is there. However, it's conservative when it comes to 2024 student numbers. So I question for everyone, and I'll probably start with Mr. Sang, if you don't mind. How do you see 2024 in terms of study abroad numbers?
All right, I believe in 2024, there will be increasing number of Chinese students starting abroad. I'm looking forward to have a result as they have the same level compared to the 2019. So I have seen that in 2023, the recovery has already achieved like 80% compared to the 2019. So this year, I'm looking for the same level at that.
Very good. Rona, what about your experience?
I think that the application number this year is going to be increased, but it's very, very slow, with very slow speed, because of just after pandemic, So everything is recovering, and but compare with the last year, you can see the trade is going to be getting better, and I can see some status from ourselves. It's like shows the increase, and includes the number of the application, and also have a conversion rate is also increase. But it's a slowly. It's not like the fast increase. It's just but you can see the trade getting better.
Sure. And if I may ask you, Joshua, what do you think is the recipe for the UK for being able to grow during COVID and sort of sustained growth also throughout 2023? We've seen the recovery level, so very keen to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I think the initial success was because the UK borders remained fairly open compared to some other countries throughout the pandemic. So there was an initial advantage compared to other Anglophone countries. But moving on to 2024, I agree with Rona, and I think there'll be a small incremental growth, which will depend on what program. I think there'll be a difference between growth in UG and PG as well. Perhaps we'll see a slightly more increase in UG than PG over the next year as well.
Very interesting. And I know that we've just completed a report for the British Council that assessed the entry points of Chinese students to higher education systems. And we're very much looking forward to releasing that report later in the year. And maybe a follow-up question to that. What key trends do you see are shaping student mobility from China in 2024? What providers need to take note of?
So I think it's going to be things which you mentioned in the presentation. So economic conditions, I think that needs to be kept an eye on. Country relations between each other, the graduate market with employment becoming increasingly more important as well. As the graduate market becomes more competitive in China, parents and students are going to be looking for more employment outcomes and return on investment for their study abroad. So again, employability is going to be a key push in 2024. Other things, again, I mentioned in the presentation, was that students are applying for multiple countries, and this started around the pandemic, and it's continuing, which means students have more choices, and they're choosing the choice which suits their needs and desires, depending on where they get offered from. So I think the appetite remains strong from China, but institutions around the world may need to work harder to pull those students to their institutions.
Thank you. Certainly our experience that the competition levels are increasing. Rona, I saw you nodding there. Can you elaborate a bit more on the employability prospect for Chinese students at the moment, and what needs to be improved in the, let's say, years to come?
In China, if students consider it to find a good job, have a very big stress, and because it's very difficult for in China, it's a very competitive. It's between the peers, like students need to beat their peer to getting a good offer. So it's not easy to find a good job, and it's not too much place for too much student to get in the right place to find the good job like they feel satisfied with. So it's not easy. They need to work hard when they study in the university, or they do better than their peers.
Right, I see. And Mr. Sang, would you have any advice for education providers who are looking at revamping their graduate prospects for their students?
Right. What I'm gonna say is the Chinese families are always looking for the resource, and the resource of our education is to get a job. So all the educators must think, how can they help students to get a job eventually? And in China, based on some data from the government, so we can see the students more students are looking for the job, like more stable job, like the government-related jobs or state-owned enterprises. So when this kind of job, I mean, the employer comes up, they are judge the students by the rankings or the grades. So if your university don't have a very good rankings, you might think about to get those students with lower degrees, like 3 years college diploma or something like that. They can help them to achieve a better degrees. That's what they can do to help students to get a job and to get in your universities.
Right. So it seems that the combination of rankings and really strong employability outcomes for students is the key driver at the moment. Have you seen any shifts in the customer structure in China, new or emerging student profiles?
Yeah, it didn't change much, but I've seen some like the adult students, which they have the diplomas like a few years ago, and they want to improve their degrees. So I think that's part of the newcomers.
Right. And before we wrap this sort of section on market demands and trends and drivers, one final thought on the changing student preferences. We've noted that strong demand for Asian destinations. We noted that the intra-regional mobility within Asia is growing and perhaps poised to grow even further. Would you have any complementary views on that?
Right, for the Asian countries, they have got the popularities in the past few years because of the similar culture, or we can see kind of safety, or the lower cost, something like that. But I don't think they're gonna impact the whole industry too much, because like take an example for the Hong Kong and the Singapore, they are very popular in the past few years, but they are small. They have a kind of limit. The capacity of international students is limited, so they won't impact the whole market a lot. I think the majority of students are still looking for the traditional English-speaking countries like the US, UK, Australia, and Canada.
Right, I think that's reassuring to colleagues joining from these destinations. I wonder, Joshua, what is your view on that intra-regional mobility growth and any impacts on, let's say, the attractiveness of the UK as a study destination?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something we're seeing. And again, I think the growth really started around the pandemic time, when parents were concerned about safety and their children being close to home. But places like Hong Kong, SAR, Singapore, and Macau are all becoming increasingly popular. Again, high quality education and safe. I think another big driver is that the authorities for Hong Kong essentially have increased their cap on non-local undergraduates. So again, this is showing the welcomingness and increased capacity. But as Mr. Sang said, traditional destinations will continue to draw significant numbers from China.
Very good. Now, as we've described that the landscape is quite competitive in China, we talked about the importance of strategic partnerships. One thing that we are observing certainly is the improved access to information amongst prospective students, and how that already starts to affect the dialogue and interaction with education agencies. And Rona, we spoke before the webinar about how your agency is adjusting to that trend. Can you share a little bit more in terms of what is important for students to know, how they decide? Have you seen any changes in the decision-making process?
Oh, yes. It's actually I think if talking about like the destination or decision-making, is for students, it's like like I mentioned before, is the QS ranking is become more important factors for students to know the university. Then they're gonna make the first decision, like I select those university with the higher ranking, and they're gonna consider as if they can enter the higher ranking university, they can find they think they can have a good job after graduate. That's the first reason, the main reason for them to choose university. And another is about the costs, like which country they're going to come and to how much they're going to spend, and also about the safety. It's like especially for the parents, is talking with the student together with us, and is that used to ask question like how much I'm gonna spend when I'm living in exactly the country here. Like for example, they compare with the Hong Kong and Singapore, which is more expensive or which is a cheaper one, or how much money they're gonna take the flight to the country or take the train to the Hong Kong, or compare with the UK, like the UK is valuable. If I spend too much money studying in the UK or US, but I think it's valuable, it's worth it. Worth I spend too much money. So it's actually really depends on, like for example, depends on the families, the wealthy, like if the middle class, they're going to like Joshua mentioned, traditional country destination is still, I think, believe it's going to be UK and US, and also like the Australia. Australia is very big competitor actually with the UK, and so these three countries still the very strong and a great destination for students making their choice. However, if like mentioned, like Asia, the regions in Asia like the Singapore, Malaysia, or Hong Kong. Hong Kong is always the very strong competitor. When students are going to plan to study abroad, they have more options. Like they select the Hong Kong with plus the UK. They can compare the offer, like which one is the more safety, more closer to the mainland China, and how much money they're gonna spend. When they have two offers, they're gonna think also some consider like Hong Kong's university has very nice ranking, QS ranking. So this really have the impact on how they make their decision. But this very depends on individual family, like they are wealthy, how much money they can spend. So like Malaysia is more cheaper, but they also have nice university campus here. For example, like BONARD University, Malaysia, they have very nice ranking, but they don't need to spend too much money. And also in Singapore, they still have very nice university campus here, like Germany, the TUM is a technical Munich of University of Munich, I think is QS 2013, I think top 13 in the world. So this student can select both. You can have the Nanyang University's certificate, or you can have the certificate from the Germany. So it's a very this for students, they have more choice to make their decision. However, I think it's the main reason for them making choice is like the money, safety, and how the university can help them to getting good job when they graduate.
Mm-hmm. Right, thank you. I think that's a nice wrap up again to those key features that institutions need to be bearing in mind when they design their marketing collateral and appealing campaigns and Chinese students. You've opened an interesting area, sort of a discussion topic, which is obviously the proliferation of TNE within the region, and how does that open up options for Chinese students. And what we're certainly seeing in the market, which goes back to students having more options, is that rebuilding student pipelines for destinations which now have these changes in visa policies, it'll be probably more difficult for them to rebuild those student pipelines because of that. You spoke about affordability. I think this is something we need to spend a little bit more time on. One thing we've noted pre-pandemic was that the scholarship offering by institutions was probably not as pronounced as it is now. Do you see more universities in the UK, in the US, Canada, or Australia, offering scholarships to Chinese students to kind of bit of attract, as an effort to attract more Chinese students and, let's say, protect the student revenue and market share?
Yes, the scholarship now is in the UK, some university also offer the opportunity for students to apply the scholarship and or encourage students to select university by the scholarship. And I think it's good actually. It's for some students, they're very sensitive to the money, to the tuition fee, how they're going to pay. So if have a scholarship, it's I do see some cases from our branch. The counselors share the story from our students. Say the scholarship going to, for some students, going to be the final very important factor for them making the final decision. And they're gonna compare, like they have more than one offer, and another university can offer a very this great scholarship, for example, like more than 3,000 or 4,000 students gonna make the choice like to select that university. But it's also, I still depends on the individual family, how they look at the how much look at is worth or not. Some students maybe more care about the scholarship rather than the QS ranking.
Sure, and I think that's an important thing to know, that it's sort of becoming a tool for institutions to boost their recruitment in China. I wonder, Mr. Sang, if you have any other views on the concept of affordability?
Yeah, right. As you talk about the scholarship, that might help, and depends on how much the scholarship gonna be, and the scholarship always affect on the final decision when they got the offers, see which one gonna spend less. But at the very beginning, when they start planning, they're gonna start it abroad, they're gonna be the totally different thing. They're gonna have nothing to do with the scholarship. They just think about which country has less tuition and the less like the living cost. So that's for the different level of the students. Like take an example, in the south of China, they have more students starting abroad rather than the north of China. And in that area, they have multiple choices. They have more diversity of the destinations. They like to choose the Malaysia because it's cheap. They would like to choose the South Korea because it's cheap. They choose the Japan because you can work to get in the money. So I'm gonna just divide the affordability in two. The first one is still the traditional ones. The US, UK, Australia, Canada, they have the same level, and the US are the top of the cost. And the rest of the destinations, they will compare to the affordability, like the European universities. They have very little tuitions, and it's reasonable living cost. Like Asian countries, they have a more cheaper living cost. So I think it's the affordability is compared with the tuition and the living cost together.
Sure, thank you, and also for bringing that geographical perspective, because obviously China is a market within a market, and you need to be looking at the full spectrum of regional opportunities. Now, we have one more poll for our audience to look at some of the challenges providers face when recruiting students from China. So let's bring up the poll, and then we will wrap up the session with some recommendations for education providers. So the question is, what challenges do you experience when recruiting students from China? The selection was informed through our conversations with a number of providers in some of the leading destinations. So very keen to hear what the audience experiences at the moment. We'll give people a bit more time, obviously, to immerse and answer, but probably I'm mindful of the time. So let's venture into the area of recommendations. I know, Joshua, this is a terribly competitive environment at the moment, but are there any suggestions that you could share with providers seeking to recruit more students from China?
Yeah, I'll do my best. Some of them have already been mentioned. So employability, and these could be internships, but also adding employability skills into the curriculum, partnering with industries that focus on career success. Something that hasn't been mentioned, I think, yet is safety. So Chinese families are very concerned about safety, particularly in other countries. China's often presented as a very safe country, less so some other countries. Very practical things like follow up with agents and students quickly. Don't let them wait because your competitor might not be. Focus on tier 2 and 3 cities as well, to where you might stand out more. And I think it's also important that universities and education providers realize they should invest in travel, meet the agents, meet the counselors, and it's the relationships here that really help. So reinvest in travel. If you haven't been out here post-pandemic, do come out here if you do want to work in China. I think other things are digital marketing, things like Little Red Book and WeChat are very, very popular. And I think, again, post-pandemic, parents are looking online for information much more than before. So again, it's that strategy of having that digital presence. I think from more the UK side than perhaps the marketing side or on the ground recruitment side, is enhance pre-departure briefings, make the students more aware and comfortable about what studying in the UK will be like, essentially make them feel more welcome, enhance welcome week and welfare, have Chinese speaking welfare staff to make them feel more welcome, and extra English lessons as well. And again, I think, of course, as Rona said, it's the ranking. So focus on the quality of education, which is going to be very, very important. Chinese alumni and Chinese societies, maybe promote your Chinese societies beforehand. Chinese students, this will really help Chinese students make friends, and they feel much more comfortable if they do have these alumni societies to just tap into when they arrive. Yeah, that's a start, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, probably could facilitate another conversation on its own. Let's bring the results of the poll now, and then for those of you who are able to stay a little bit longer, we'll also give an opportunity to Mr. Sang and Rona to comment on those recommendations. Again, it's fairly equally split. 42%, and this was a multiple choice question. 42% of our audience finds it difficult to locate and maintain suitable agent partners, which we think is a relevant point looking at the Chinese agency market mushrooming. You know, in the last 2 years, the amount of new Chinese agencies have been quite significant. 12% face a challenge in terms of providing local student support and services. That's fairly low, which indicates that the majority of our audience are already investing effort into student services locally. About 40% have challenged with identifying effective marketing channels. So probably that's to your point, Joshua, about being present digitally on the right platforms. 33% look at the economic situation in China and implication on students' decision-making and price sensitivity. 17% still perceive safety concerns from Chinese parents as an issue when recruiting students. And lastly, 20% do see a challenge in identifying demand changes. So very, very interesting. Again, we're very close to the time limit. However, would you have any conclusive remarks, Rona, on those recommendations? Again, you being in the field, communicating with both parents and students on one end, and your partners.
The recommendation, you mean how the agency to support parents, right? Or the support university?
Any recommendations that you would suggest to your education partners or educational institutions who look to boost their presence in China?
Okay, recommendation. Actually, I think first need to provide very good service to the students from both like from university, from agency. I can see the results from the questionnaire. It's first one is the challenge. Find a good suitable agency for students. Yes, it is. I really agree with that because it's in China there has too much agents, small, big one or traditional one like us with very big and established more than almost 13 years. It's like a kind of different kind of. So for students, very difficult to select the suitable agency to give them nice services and experience when helping them to select the nice university or give the very good professional guidance. So that's important. So I think I put the services first and give the enhance to encourage to enhance the professional from like the counselor need to enhance their professional knowledge, have more knowledge to give the support and to let students to know more about the major courses and the different how they study in the different country. We'll have different kind of the courses and the services life here. And also from the university, I recommend if a university also can give the support. Some university also have a very, very long partnership with the agency. So it's going to have each support each other and give more training or support. And we also give more feedbacks, comments from the clients and customers or family students to let our partner to know how they're going to helping them to making the decisions to helping student back after even we just finish our services, but students still need to go to the university to continue their study life. So our comments and feedback going to, I think it should be helpful to support our partner, like universities or higher institutions. So also we also recommend like doing the branding in China, like to enhance the reputation in China market. I just see in some small city, the parents even not hear about that university. It's I think it's really close. It's really about how the university doing the market and the branding in China. So some parents, for some students' parents, they have no idea about this university. Even we are in this industry, we know that they are famous, but for the parents, it's like a stranger. They just tell us like, well, I first know this university. So it's very important if doing more like the advertisement or the branding in China for the abroad study abroad, like how the different from China and which the university, how to let them know they are a great choice for them.
Right, very, very insightful. And Mr. Sang, you do have the overarching view of the market, the agency landscape. From your perspective, what would be the recommendations you'd share with education providers looking to do more recruitment in China?
Okay, so I think the first thing I'll agree with the Joshua about the social media. They can just post some like materials on the social media, but the challenge is how can they produce the interesting ones or the attractive ones? You must think about that. So because the young generations, they use the social media as a kind of encyclopedia. So if they heard some universities, they're gonna just check on the social media. So see if it appears on that to discover some information. And but before you entering the China market, the educators, you must think about yourself, what the strengths you have, like the cost or the rankings or the facilities you are, I mean the entry requirements, how facilities you can get and where is your bottom line. You must figure out your strengths. Then you can choose the way to promote your universities. Either find the agents, the aggregators, the big ones or the small ones, or very specific cities, or you can find some facilitators to help you establish cooperation with the Chinese university, which is very popular recently, not recently, but in the few years. So because the Chinese government asked the Chinese university to establish cooperation with the foreign educators, and the students, they're willing to study in China for like 2 years or 3 years at the first and go study abroad again after that. So that's a great opportunity for you to establish the cooperation with Chinese university, but you have to find the facilitators, which means they have the resources, they have the sources to connect the Chinese university.
Thank you. I think that was very, very inspirational in a way for institutions who might not be really sure about the market entry strategy, or perhaps penetrating new cities and new geographies within China, to look at those peer-to-peer partnerships, which we know are really growing in terms of popularity, contribute to the fact that students have more options, and also boost local education system capacity, which again is an underlying factor for future development. At this point, I probably would like to thank you, the panelists, for bringing the wealth of insights and really adding the glue to the data. Your observation, I'm 100% sure, would be immensely insightful for our audience today, but also to our audience who kind of stayed over a little bit. But I do hope that the session was insightful. We will be distributing the slides and the recording with you after the session. Also, for those of you who are going to attend NAFSA, me and our COO Igor Skibitsky will be attending. We'll be announcing a strategic partnership at the conference. We'll be very happy to meet any of you who might be interested in a meeting to dive deeper into the either Chinese market or any other market. And also would like to extend our offer to sign up for our Market Monitor, which is a complimentary service we developed for the sector to have access to daily highlights from over 250 industry resources. Once again, thank you very much for tuning in. Let me wish you a nice rest of the day. And we're very much looking forward to keeping in touch. Thank you.